Well, let's see what adjustments they make. Game 3 picks and bans ready. Queso again in that second pick side. They've been second pick all day long so far and seem to have been liking it, quite a lot, at least for the first game. Second game didn't go quite their way as an early Nuwa ban by Simplicity. It may seem a bit odd, but as we've said, first ban these days gets a throwaway ban basically guaranteed.
Yeah.
And Nuwa just happens to be the one.
Queso picked that up in game number 1, banned away in game number 2, so still not surprised to see the same strategy in game number 3. Simplicity have been, first pick the entire set.
That's right, and no Gibalanque for either side either, by the way. Something to keep an eye on. We haven't seen X-Ball all day today. Don't know what that's about, but maybe we'll see that remedied here as Merlin banned by Simplicity and then Freya again. So 4 mages off the board, just like last time. Simplicity here, I believe, first picked the Jormungandr last game, so maybe they give that back to maniaKK. Maybe they try and guarantee Genetics gets his Fafnir, something that he really likes. We got a couple options, and it is that Fafnir first pick. So Queso has the option to take away the worm from maniaKK.
I think that's the right call. The way maniaKK has been able to dive that backline was too obtrusive for Queso to handle. Like game 1, it wasn't that big of an issue because of the Nuwa. It was specifically the Nuwa Hercules combination blew up the Jormungandr in the late game. But now that you don't have to worry about the Nuwa, I don't think they necessarily mind it.
Now Susano actually selected here by Queso, trying to keep that out of the hands of Simplicity and give it over to WorstTurttle this time around, but they keep sticking with this Hercules, Tolly. Has Draco done enough to make you think that this is worth the top 2 for them again?
I think so. As long as that he's able to get to that late game, he still has the potential of, pulling and pushing people every which way he wants to. His early pressure has been solid. It just comes down to worrying about the cripples. If he's not too far out of position, then those cripples will start to hurt him at the end.
Poseidon could be really good here for Simplicity. Poseidon or AMC I think is fine, but they go back to that Jormungandr, but the cripples look just as good here, if not better, in comparison to game 2, because now they've got a Susano they could have shut down with those. So Queso may be getting away with one, but Rat Jorm is a lot of semi-global aerial pressure that's very, very hard to peel away.
The dive potential is real. If anyone gets too low from Queso, you expect the Through the Cosmos or the World Serpent to play cleanup crew. And you're talking about ways to shut down Susano and Hercules with cripples. Well, Erlang Shen also going to get shut down even harder out of the cripple.
Yeah, Poseidon immediately banned. No surprise there from Queso. I'd expect an AMC ban next, honestly, with how well StreakUp played that in game 2, especially with that extra cripple that you have to worry about now.
Yeah.
Playing the Susano, and it is going to be the AMC. So what are some of the, other cripples now that you're looking towards?
Artio is probably your best go-to. There's 2 frontliners, so you still have a solo laner potentially. You could run technically, you're not running Artio jungle, so it has to be Rat jungle.
You need an ADC and a mid from here. There's not that many good cripples left. I mean, Hera has
that is.
a polymorph.
Jormungandr could technically run in the mid.
Sure. Or is that worth picking up an Artio against that comp? It might be, honestly.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, Jing Wei now as well could be shut down by it, but we're looking for more cripples. A Willish, again, you already have your jungler. That's where the majority of the cripples are going to be elsewhere, in your solos and in your junglers and in your supports. Chernobog is something that DeathPanter's played an awful lot and probably going to be going to the mid lane here for Chernobog, which I don't mind. It, again, matches that global, semi-global pressure that the rest of his team has.
Scylla could be another option for the cripple if they really want to, but it's going to be double Hunter because it's simplicity.
Right, and they've got a Fafnir, so they want to burn those objectives quickly. This is a comp that has done very, very well for Simplicity during their time here this phase. As Queso looking to round out their draft now, they need a mid laner for Warchi. The 4 mages banned by Simplicity, all looking towards that mid laner. I imagine that Agni's probably on the table here.
I say Zhang Kui. You have such a great aggressive frontliner. Just commit all in at this point. Allow the Jing Wei to be the hyper late game carry that you really want to flex.
Okay, everyone.
There's a Scylla. You were mentioning it maybe for Simplicity, but it's actually going to be Warchi. I mean, they have tons of CC, so I don't mind it. I mean, they've got tons of setup for him. Just a matter of if he can actually find a home with it. Queso versus Simplicity, game 3, down to the wire now. Queso trying to upset the number 2 seed and get themselves one step closer to the midseason invitational. Finch and Tom bringing us game 3.
More than happy to, Aggro. Good job there, Tully, as well, as we move into game number 3. Queso reeling after a tough loss. Would love to be able to grab this set victory, and Simplicity stand tallly in their way. Dracomarino, though, 3 games in a row is on this Hercules support. Clearly, he's felt comfortable on it. He's back on it again.
I like it. I do like it a lot. I did hear a little bit of concern about lack of tank ability, Draco and Julio. I see that. I think that maybe some itemization could be changed, but realistically, I think that the composition around it was a little bit rough. All of the cripples on the other side is really what shut down the Herc. He can get out of there. I think he can do his job.
I really like the idea of taking this Susano away from Froisan as well,
Yeah.
and not letting him pilot that one. He had a great game on it, especially in the early game. I know it tapered off a bit when we got to like the mid and the late, as Froisan's using a blink, perhaps just to move around the map faster. And then the WorstTurtles, or rather Froisan's Susano fell off.
Body
We
block,
might not
body
even get a
block.
chance to talk about it though, as maniaK's in some trouble.
I like
he
the body
banks
block.
it back out of there though.
I like the body block. That's always fun. It's one of the most fun things in SMITE for me. Not able to be flipped, so Draco wouldn't be able to find the Earthbreaker if he had it, but he has leveled the driving strike. And the job here for Team Queso is to just get the pressure so that they can look for the blue buff invade.
And maniaKK has a ton of health pods, so he's definitely okay with taking a little bit of extra coke here. Maybe even was expected to get bullied some as Froisan makes his rotation over to try and help defend the blue buff. Julio and Dracomarino go right to it as well to try and drop down the objective. Froisan hammers away like the little squirrel that he is. Can't quite stop them. DeathPanter, though, might need some help as he ends up falling in the middle lane. It's a WorstTurttle getting the party started early on the Susano.
Big boy plays just real old-fashioned first blood. Go for the gank in mid lane and obtain it. You know where the enemy jungler is.
Right.
You know where the enemy support is, so just go for it.
They knew they didn't have anything else to worry about, and they find themselves an easy kill. But like I was saying, I mean, Froisan looked really comfortable in this pick last game. So yeah, it's really strong to take this away from him. But it's not just taking it away from him. I mean, WorstTurttle, as you just saw demonstrated, has a good Susano in his own right. So I like the idea. Make the substitute. Make him prove that he can play some other stuff. He's already shown us, you know, what he looks comfortable on. So keep going further down his checklist and making sure that everything is as good as the last.
Right side, maniaK's going to check off the Totem of Coup. Julio did have a little bit of rotation, but the Hercules will walk right back into mid lane. And what I look for here in this adaptation, game number 3, simplicity with the double hunter composition. It's a little bit later game than we might have seen, although Ullr is there, so mid to late, etc., etc. But we got to watch out for the tower push, but more importantly, the objective pushes. And that's why I think we see the Scylla come out here later on in the draft for Warchi, is because if the hunters do wind up going, you were talking about two different mentalities as far as burning objectives.
Right.
If the hunters do look to burn those objectives, it will be answered by Warchi's kind of yin to that yang by way of large burst.
Do you consider StreakUp, or not StreakUp, but Ullr more or less of a hunter than AMC, or do you have them at the same level?
It's very interesting. I think they're a little bit of hybrid, but we'll get into it in a moment.
Certainly, as there could be some trouble. Axe Stun doesn't land, but the pull absolutely does. It's Genetics that's brought back to the Wolves. He can't find the hammer either. Hail of Arrows is good damage, and Genetics should be out of there A-OK as they get a wave pushed in. So that is at least a small win that they deny some farm.
So going back to your question about the hunters, I think when you look at Amusing Cobb, Amusing Cobb is very, very fun to me. I think Ullr is ability based, but he does have access to a little bit of a steroid, right? So I'd say he's 70-30, 60-40 type deal. Amusing Cobb is the great sorter. It is the glass with water in it, and you tell me if it's half full or half empty. You can lean on hives, build lifesteal, and be a basic attacker, or you're going to build Mage's Blessing and go for the swarm and the ultimate spam and the ability damage. I think he does both. I think he can succeed with both types of build, and I think it kind of just shows your playstyle, which you enjoy a little bit more. Or, of course, playstyle's a dirty word. There's always a correct way to play things. If they're all tanks, go basic attack and build shins. If they're not, build mage.
You know, I was really just wondering if we could establish a gradient of the characters that StreakUp has played so far, from Merlin all the way down to the most hunter toward the end. It was really the dumb bit I was trying to
He
set
played
up.
AMC in game 2?
Yeah, it was Merlin, AMC, and then to the Ullr. Now, the Ullr is the most single target of them all.
Yes.
Which I think I can still allow my bit to flourish.
It works. It works absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely a gradient there. I'd go with it. I'd go with it for sure.
And regardless of what he's been on, StreakUp has looked good here for the team. So of course it's just a little bit of fun to have him. As he played the Merlin.
I am
you know,
having
certainly
no fun.
fine. The Amusing Cobb, well, that's good. You had too much in game 2, so You deserve less now, I say.
I don't know. After game 2, I'm reeling. I'm dealing. I'm feeling. No, I'm kidding.
maniaKK, though, clearly going with the same build he's gone with all set long. He's very, very comfortable with this start, though he is taking a little bit of extra poke from Julio maybe than he wanted. He had the 9 turns blessing for some nice heal, but maniaKK holds on to his ultimate, so a nice trade for him.
I haven't had too much of a problem with maniaKK's builds. You heard the desk analyst talk about how maybe they weren't tanky enough. He was talking about Julio, but I think maniaKK falls in the same conversation. You brought up concerns as well.
There's a full-on concerted effort to make sure that Julio dies, and it works. Julio does indeed die. They bring the Rat over as well. DeathPanter even joins the fray, and really, there's no way out there for Julio. That's not on him.
I just think it's important for Jormungandr to do damage. If Jorm isn't doing damage, what really is he doing?
He's knocking up. He's slowing. He can see people that are stealth.
That's actually a really big deal, and I'm not going to downplay the amount of control that he brings to the map, and
Yeah.
perhaps I should kind of rectify my statement. What he does is, that damage,
The damage is very nice.
The
It's a
damage
lot.
is imperative because he's often by himself behind enemy lines and has to wait for his team to catch up. And so what happens is he dies behind enemy lines either with the invisibility or the ultimate, and he deals enough damage to make it safe for his team to join him and then bring them down from whatever threshold they were at to 0. So if you go and you're full tank and you do 10% and your team has to do 90% of the opposition, that's a little bit rough. But if you can jump on 1 or 2 targets and bring them down to about 50%, well, your team can walk in, land an Ullr combo, and call it a day. So it is very important for this Jormungandr pick, I think, to bring damage along with him.
That's right. If your solo laner can't get the kill, you want him to get to that TKO threshold, right? Where whoever he's on can't stick around and fight for sure because they've taken that much damage. So it definitely is still important that maniaKK's able to do enough to be a viable threat when he dies all the way there in the back line on this Jormungandr. And with the build path he's gone, he's been able to do it as Chekio takes a ton of damage. That is indeed the Ullr tax. WorstTurttle, though, pulls in 2, and StreakUp has the beans. That means he avoids getting knocked up, and WorstTurttle has to disengage, though Genetics can't find either stun, and WorstTurttle should be out of there.
Meanwhile, there's going to be a Dracomarino wrapping around from the backside. Knock up, pushed away, pushed one more time. A stun is good. Genetics still alive, but he gets followed up by the jungler. It's 2-1.
And that's how you capitalize, man, on that D-transformation when he turns back into the dwarf from that dragon form. Had the knock up there waiting for him, and that set up for a very clean push from Draco. And another clean push right there into Froisan. So yeah, Draco can keep playing Hercules. I won't bring it up again.
Dracomarino. Well, you know, it's very interesting. Draco has kind of been one of my favorite supports to watch, and I think this Hercules is kind of off-brand for him. Usually he's on the characters like the Kepris, the Ganesh really comes to mind when I think of Dracomarino. You see a lot of Gab out of Dracomarino, and the aggressive offensive Hercules just looking to wheel and deal and provide a whole bunch of like damage and be aggressive and up front. It's a little bit of a stray away from what we're used to seeing, and I don't care. I like when the artist changes from album 2 to 3, and that's what I'm seeing here, and I'm totally in.
Okay, so I have to try and keep up this pressure, though. You highlighted those double hunters earlier, Tom, and that's going to keep. I mean, that's going to stay a threat.
Yep.
They've got the Fafnir there with that AoE course from Genetics. If you give them a little bit of time, a small window, especially this Chernobog and the Ullr, they'll be able to burn through a Gold Fury, Pyro, maybe even FG, and Simplicity have shown a willingness to go for him. So they'll definitely, if you give them a window, they'll definitely walk through it.
I'm more concerned about it. This has something to do with one of those hunters. The globalization of Simplicity. They're going to look to
You worried about the
colonize-
globalists?
They're going to colonize the whole map. You've got Froisan and DeathPanter with the ability to rotate from left to right and just kind of claim any land as their own. That's a really big deal. If anybody on Simplicity gets into trouble, DeathPanter can get to them from literally any place on the map, and Froisan can get to there from almost any place on the map. So
And even maniaKK from almost any place on the map.
that's very true. maniaKK has an ability that'll let him travel a huge amount of distance as well. So Simplicity can kind of show up at a moment's notice, and Queso has to be very aware of that.
Well, the one kill that they have onto Julio is that first half of what they want to do, is that pick type of composition they can get with all this rotational ability, which can potentially get them a lead to transition then into these double hunters facilitated by the Fafnir. The question is, though, have they done enough with all these rotational abilities early on to make great use of it? For what it's worth, Chernobog's ultimate is still nice, even in a team fight. You know, it's slowing everyone out there, and he can just drop right back down. But you definitely want to be able to get as much as you can out of his ability to be anywhere on the map.
Got to agree with that one. Absolutely have to agree with that one. The question I'm asking myself here.
Yeah? You can ask me, too.
No, this one's just for me.
Okay. So I'll just talk then. Froisan goes up into the air, into the Rat ultimate, and maniaKK doesn't seem to want to follow along, so they'll just turn right back around. I got jebaited, and so did Team Queso.
That was perfect, though. No, that was really good. Froisan uses the ult, and I use this term a lot. It's a term borrowed from card games, actually. The threat of activation. You see the Ratatoskr go up into the world tree, and he sits there just going, all right, I'm not doing anything immediately threatening, but I'm on the board and I'm relevant. And if you walk towards my blue buff, guess who's getting knocked up and collapsed on? So the threat of the jump down, the threat of the activation of the Ratatoskr ultimate was what worried Team Queso and forced them out. Because if they commit, they die. So instead, Rat just goes, all right, y'all walked away, we get to defend our blue buff. So it looked like almost a wasted ultimate, but a very important ultimate and a lot of subtext, which that fight happened in everybody's mind.
And Froisan's kind of a Sherlock Holmes type fight. Yeah, you're not wrong. Froisan was able to make the rotation over, and not just then, but multiple times throughout this game, including an earlier pick, and it has worked for maniaKK.
Yeah.
He has about a level and a half or so lead over Julio, which is nice. If you can try and keep this Erlang Shen down, who's been cheating into more bruisey builds than tanky builds anyway, then maybe they can punish him throughout the rest of this map. I don't mind this at all, trying to get maniaKK into a more comfortable spot.
Elementary. You call
Does that make me Watson then, or?
Yeah, my dear Watson.
StreakUp has the axe that keeps Dracomarino at bay, and DeathPanter making the rotations we highlighted. Can he get in range for the root, though? It looks like no, and Dracomarino makes it out. He does not yet have any extra help by the way of movement speed, except Talaria, and they couldn't catch up with him.
If I made a movie about your life, I'd cast Lucy Liu as you.
That'd be awesome. I don't think it would be in any way accurate, though, but it'd be awesome. I mean, because it sounds like I'd get to be hanging out with Lucy Liu a lot, which was fine with me.
No, see, as the director.
It's about me, you fool.
Listen, when it comes to Hollywood, we gotta change some things here, son. So, you know, just give us the details. We'll write it how we feel. Listen, you've seen Unison. That's how it works. Right?
Nah, she's method. There's no way she's not gonna want to come speak to me and see. A quality actress like Lucy Liu would definitely want to do her homework. As Froisan comes back in to land the knockups, timed perfectly with the knockup from maniaKK. But this feels more like getting away than anything.
Yeah.
They were under so much duress at the rest of Simplicity have to fall back.
If you want a little bit of insight into Simplicity's comms, anytime there's a fight, look at your minimap and see what DeathPanter is doing. DeathPanter was walking to the left. He was in the middle of the jungle, and he was walking towards the mid lane before any retreat out of Simplicity on the right side. So you know that he's not interested in that team fight, which means Simplicity is not interested in that team fight. Had he stood in one place, that means his ultimate's kind of executing right now, and he'll be there in a moment. Or if he's moving to the right, he's clearly kind of transitioning over and forcing that team fight. DeathPanter is going to be pivotal. He is the cornerstone to a lot of what's going to make Simplicity win or lose these individual team fights, and you can watch him for a little bit more information on how these fights go. And that's all well and good to you at home because we have the whole vision of the whole map. Team Queso can work on that by putting wards where they think that DP is going to go, most notably in the middle lane and side to side, and be aware of where this Chernobog is going to head, and that way they can tell if it's going to be a real team fight or just a bait.
I need to make sure they have as much information available to them as possible because it's not just Julio who's had a bit of a struggle. Checkio's only just been able to catch back up in terms of experience with StreakUp, who's done a really good job so far bullying him out.
I love the idea from Simplicity because they identified what I just said, and they have two sentry specific on the left side and the right side of the mid lane, knowing that DeathPanter's rotation is going to sell out their strategy. Wherever DeathPanter goes is where the team fight goes. Simplicity have to make sure that Queso can't ward there.
Checkio can't keep up the chase, even though there was a WorstTurttle rotation. In fact, this might be a bit of a turnaround, but DeathPanter can't find the roots on the WorstTurttle, and he makes his way back out. The Dracomarino and Warchi coming over for a second layer of initiation could spell even more potential trouble, though Genetics there to defend as well, and Queso can't afford to all in. But with this many people on this side of the map, you got to try and make something happen with it, whether it's a pick or a fight. Warchi gets stunned, uses the beat, and makes his way back out.
Draco doesn't go for genetics, holding his driving strike in case his carry needs a peel. And I will respect that. Excuse me, Finch. I'm very sorry for that.
Yeah, you should be.
You should be. But I will respect that. But that looked really bad for Simplicity. They had genetics and one other member pushed up into an entire Team Queso squad. That could have been miserable, but Dracomarino kind of lets one go there.
And the initiation range is wider than you might think for Team Queso. They've got 3 blinks right now, so you don't have to be even as far as out of position as you're used to against this much mobility from this comp. So maybe they can't globally rotate,
right.
But if you're nearby, Julio, WorstTurttle, and Dracomarino are going to be looking for you.
Dracomarino there, I think, was a little bit, telling of his play style, and I like that he's playing this Hercules and he's played well. Not as number 1 perhaps, but he's played well. And I like to see him bringing this other side out. But I think it was telling his instincts are a little bit more defensive than offensive. He could have driving struck genetics into the back line. Genetics would have jumped back and the team could have chased, etc., etc. But he's saving his driving strike for if Warchi gets jumped on. That defensive mindset, that support mentality is what has allowed Dracomarino to be so successful up until this point. If you're playing these warrior supports, maybe you've got to change. We'll see how the game goes. If they get the win, I'll shut up.
It's kind of the only instant peel that they have, as there looks to be a skirmish around those mid-harpies. Root lands on a genetics, and he pins him against the wall. Back up from DeathPanter, though, puts down the root. But I don't think it was enough. Genetics isolated, able to hop over the wall and get away from the Typhoon, and he's able to make his way out of there.
That's a little annoying, but it doesn't really hurt Team Queso. They get the totally knockout, the TKO. Player has to back to base, not really going to be involved in the fight, and so even without a kill, they have the advantage.
Well, maniaK's ulting, and so is Froisan. You said it before. Keep an eye on these ultimates to tell when it's real. DeathPanter goes up too, and that means they're all in. 2 knockups land on the backside, and maniaKK starts trying to go underground. Dracomarino, though, takes too much poke. That's all StreakUp, even though Froisan's the one that gets the kill. But can the rat make it back out? He avoids the I'm a monster, and Simplicity do it 1 for 0.
Great plays out of Simplicity, and that comes by way of maniaKK. Team Queso, you can't fault them for the thought process. They pushed the Fafnir back to base, and they have the 5-on-4. The problem is the Fafnir is a supplementary character to this composition. maniaKK, Froisan, and DeathPanter are the meat and potatoes, and they just gave Team Queso a full meal.
Well, now it's time for these double hunters to get to work on the Gold Fury. Checkio is nearby, has a little bit of backup by way of WorstTurttle as well, but the Gold Fury's been largely leashed. Julio's even had time to make his way to the engagement as well. WorstTurttle, though, in the sights of Froisan, with a little bit of help from DeathPanter, he goes down. A clean pick, but can they turn to the objective? Still, though, they slow down.
Again, I have to give genetics all the props in the world, jumping there to save his carry. StreakUp was in trouble. Genetics pops over. Sure, a lot of damage coming from a lot of different sources. Genetics' stun is what saves the day for the Ullr. And if Simplicity were going to look at the Gold Fury, it would be because the Hunter's alive. But Team Queso do a great job of maintaining presence as far as their positioning is concerned, and that's a big deal, and it forces Simplicity back.
This is huge for them to at least slow it down and not let them start pushing out into a real lead, because it's dead even. Doug, if you wouldn't mind pulling up the charts for me, my man, we could show everybody what we're talking about. This Gold Fury's now under siege. Genetics
Easy.
And the rest of the squad have found a nice window where Team Queso aren't around, and just like that, it goes down in favor of the Order team.
It's almost like Queso did not care about that Gold Fury. They have vision. They have the Oracle vision on the objective. They were very far away, but nobody even made an attempt to make the transition.
Maybe they felt like they couldn't get there in time. Once Simplicity recognized just how much space they had and committed, it might have just been too late. Queso stick around enough to stop the Gold Fury the first time. They think Simplicity are done with it. They kind of back, and then they're like, oh, well, we done goofed, and we can see our goof, by the way. So just unfortunate, I guess, circumstance.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Good timing there from the other side as well, just an understanding of how everything's going. But Team Queso right now have to look for more plays like this.
Froisan goes up into the ultimate, so he should be safe. I imagine this is just some damage maniaK's looking for, and Froisan doesn't really want to initiate. Indeed, he will fall back. Genetics is also low and gets away from Dracomarino's prying eyes. I don't know. Dracomarino was looking for him or something.
Yeah, he's prying eyes. I like that. Very romantic.
I didn't want it to be.
You listen to the Dashboard Confessional lately?
No, come on. I have a specific sect of bad early 2000s music that I like, and Dashboard Confessional was one of them.
Really?
Yeah.
Why not?
It's not my
You know, I put Further Seems Forever on your playlist. That was Chris Carrabba. Chris Carrabba is the Dashboard Confessional guy. That was his band before he did Dashboard Confessional.
Okay. Maybe I'd like them then, because I didn't like Dashboard Confessional.
The moon is down.
Joins the fray. Julio does get hit by the trimmer, but is able to make his way back out of there. Dracomarino now taking a bit of poke, but he is the Hercules, has the driving strike defensively to reposition. And now Pyromancer can at least be considered, but with all of Team Queso still here and relics up on just about everyone, they don't want to go for it. They don't have to worry about WorstTurtle's blink for another 30 seconds.
Not at all. But this is a much different dance than the one on the side of the Gold Fury zone.
Who are pulling the objective and considering grabbing, at least for now. And now Genetics and the rest team had to find their way in. They sleep a little bit too much, and the objective goes down. But they at least have a chance to reinitiate. But good ultimate from Warchi, well timed. He got the damage in on the maniaK as well before the World Serpent comes back up. So that's huge from the Scylla. That time a monster indeed, and Simplicity have to fall back.
For as well as Simplicity has played this game and the game that they won previously, that was an egregious mistake. You do not die for the Pyromancer. I don't know how many times I have to say it. Julio's gonna dash away on the right side. Triple knock-up, triple kickflip, and there's the boulder to do it as well. Dracomarino, man, what a play.
Well, it's Julio with the Galaxy Brain by baiting in everybody, apparently, in a bad position that he was on the back end. But WorstTurttle, man, absolutely saves that one with the knock-up, and Dracomarino's right there to follow up, too. That's so huge for Queso to start turning this around. Now, there is no Fury for them to grab, but maybe they can come get this tower.
I gotta give Warchi credit as well. That was Team Queso just coming together with all of their crowd control. WorstTurttle tosses the knock-up. Warchi goes, all right, y'all knocked up, y'all not going anywhere. It hits the three-man Sick'em, and then Dracomarino goes, I'm gonna put you where I want. Three-man kick pushes, and then three-man boulder throws. All three players stuck in the whirlwind of death. That was, Finch, that was just a good old trucking. I like to see it get dirty like that.
Well, again, you called the 100 IQ play earlier. We got to give the 200 IQ to Julio on this one for setting it up for everybody. Is the credit that I choose to give him instead of calling it a different way. On that play is the right side tower should go down.
By myself. Check me out with my turtle shield.
I just don't know if you could ever write the play up that way, though, right? It had to have been just a good reaction from the team off bad positioning, right? Because he hits it over the wall. You can't guarantee they're all that close to the wall to get knocked up, right? I mean, I don't know.
Julio, the artist formerly known as Julio69,
right,
is certainly a Galaxy Brain individual.
He gets it done.
You know what? I'm kind of kidding and having a good time, but Julio looks for those types of Raffer plays all the time. Genetics, on the other hand, that was brain asleep. That was not
interesting. Warchi didn't look for the reset there. He was more worried about positioning to the back of the tower. But I think he could have gotten the kill onto Genetics himself and then had another shot to fire.
But straight up, what was Genetics doing? Like that, there was no.
No, yes, that's all true. Yes.
I don't understand.
I took that as a fact and had moved beyond it. Even yes, that's how right you were about that one. But yes, he shouldn't have been in there. Is now maniaK in some trouble. Has to move back to the tier 2 tower.
He even jumps into the team. For all of the great, and the reason I'm harping on how,
because he's played so well,
exactly,
right, yeah.
Exactly. That was a very, and maybe he'll say something online later, but that was, he jumped into the enemy squad. Maybe he didn't have vision on the tower. Thought he was just going to jump onto the tower, take a couple of shots, and run to safety. That was very uncharacteristic. Genetics usually makes good decisions when it comes to the tactics of SMITE games.
Yes, and you're very right to point out that Genetics would let us know later on. He's the type that definitely watches them back and is watching the games and what their team does. So if there's something, he might give us a shout out and let us know what was going on. But
I respect that too. I think a lot of players kind of just play their game and let it go. And full disclosure, sometimes Genetics is salty about things and isn't too nice. But on the other hand, sometimes he's just straight up. And at any point, I will always give respect to somebody that's watching the VOD back, watching the tape, seeing how it went, and looking at the game from multiple lights. So I got to give him a thumbs up.
I appreciate it too. As Checkio gets caught out too far forward. DeathPanter has a ton of damage. maniaK does have 3 members busy and makes it into that ultimate. Warchi has to respond by going into the I'm a Monster, and he's waiting on where he'll land for that 3rd time. It's over the wall, and I'm a Monster's there. Now he just needs WorstTurttle to pick up the baton, but he ends up getting the shell. maniaK baits for so long and buys his team some time for StreakUp to get to Warchi.
It's a little bit too late for Team Queso, though. The ball goes over the top. DeathPanter dashes into the wall, no problem. It's 3-4 at the moment, and the power play is going to take care of the Tier 1 tower.
Yeah, this is double hunter time. Fafnir has the AoE course, and DeathPanter and StreakUp are ready to rock and roll. But it just took them too long to kill maniaK there, and that left a bunch of extra time for StreakUp to get to the back line, to be able to find Warchi, bring him down as well. Now the Primal Fury goes Simplicity's way. This has been such a back and forth game, a back and forth set really between these two teams. They're clearly evenly matched.
It's fun to watch because a lot of times when you're looking at leagues that are lower than the professional league, when it goes back and forth, it's because of mistakes being made. And while sure this hasn't been a perfect game, it's going back and forth because of powerful plays. And I think that's when SMITE is most fun to watch, when you're like, okay, they're chilling, and oh my god, Julio set up WorstTurttle, Warchi, and Draco for the 3-man push. And you're like, okay, well, Chekio's a little out of position, but Simplicity make a fantastic play off of maniaK and DeathPanter and Genetics.
Yeah.
That's what's been happening back and forth. And so, you know, when you're kind of coaching or playing in a set like this, you're sitting there and you're like, man, somebody just stop the ride. I want to get off. I just stop the ride. I mentioned it before. Slow the pace down. Slow the pace down.
Simplicity
and grab
stole
the
it.
game by the horns.
They were able to grab it. Team Queso couldn't defend the objective. It is just the Pyromancer. 26 minutes in. It's certainly not the end of the world, but a nice steal. But I like what you were saying, right? It's not as if there have been, you know, mistakes so much. I think there have been some small mistakes.
The Fire Giant steal.
Right, and Chekio's a little bit too far forward. But these are so small that I think even a team even slightly worse than these two teams wouldn't be able to punish them. That's just the level that they're playing at. So I think there have been some small ones, but like this one where Froisan gets caught out and has to use the ultimate defensively. He's been so critical for this team. So him not having that cooldown for a while could hurt.
Fire Giant, Fire Giant, Fire Giant. I'm screaming that if I'm Team Queso. I don't necessarily think I'm going to finish it, as it is enhanced and it's a big boy to deal with. But I am starting it. They don't have the Ratatoskr ultimate. I have Warchi. I want to start a fight.
And see if you can get these guys to try and overcommit into the Fire Giant. We just heard a little bit of Saturday Night at a pub Tom just now, by the way, leaking onto the cast as Fire Giant. Let's go! Could potentially be under siege. But the rest of Simplicity are now here, even though they won't have Froisan's ultimate to help out. Now he does have the Black Thorn. He has some extra cooldown here in the build, and we'll be up before too long. Won't be soon before long, a nice old Maroon 5 album. As they move right into the Fire Giant, they're the ones burning it. And yet again, Queso, I think, might have fallen too far away from the objective. Now, they can't burn it too quickly. Julio and Chekio are on their way, but the Fire Giant's already low, and Genetics is the one that's on zoning duty, well below half. Julio stunned out as well, and Simplicity secure the AFG.
That's the mistake right there, and that one could turn around and be a big deal. DeathPanter goes up and down. Queso's in trouble, and DeathPanter's ultimate's on cooldown. He wasted it, but Team Queso is on the run. Julio blinks away from the Jormungandr.
That was huge. He got enough time to get the heal off in the 9 turns Blessing, so they might be able to make it out, but we cannot say the same for Chekio or Dracomarino. Julio still stands at this point, as Froisan's actually low enough to where WorstTurttle looked for the pick, but that's 2 for 0 and the FG for Simplicity.
I take back what I said before, how these games weren't really decided on the back of mistakes. Simplicity in game number 1, when they gave away the Fire Giant, Team Queso took it. Sure, that was a mistake, but I think that was just a fantastic play by Queso. Here, ugh. I mean, he just, I'm going to call a club. You weren't where you needed to be. Team Queso needed to be around the Fire Giant, and they weren't. Thus, they lose the Fire Giant. They lose the subsequent team fight. They lose the lead they previously had. They lose everything but the game itself.
Yeah, I just don't think you could send all 5 members back like that. And it's not the first time we've seen Queso do it.
Yeah.
It's almost like they make a hard call that the fight at the objective's over. Like they're making it for all 10 players, whether or not the other team agrees. And they're like, yeah, this is done. No one's doing this right now. And they'll all back. And the other squad's like, well, you can't all just leave or we'll take it. They did it on Gold Fury and FG.
You see it in hockey and you see it in football as well, where you can pull the goalie. And what happens is if you walk away from the direct objective, The idea is to be so offensively aggressive that your opponent doesn't even have like the chance to score because you're not even thinking about that.
Yeah, it's also irrelevant how many more points they score at this point is in that play too, right? Right.
Exactly.
We need to score, we just can't win. Right.
Exactly. And so if Team Queso want to abandon all hopes of the Fire Giant and march down mid lane for a Phoenix,
right, that's different. Yeah,
you're playing with something there. And there's a mentality, and whether it's the right strategy, different story, but it's a strategy in and of itself. Backing to base and going, what if we just give it to him? That's not my favorite strategy, and I think it's hurt Team Queso here. Like I said, they lost a number of important variables in this match specifically. They're going to lose the Oni, which at this point in the game is very, very devastating.
You know what it reminds me of? It almost feels like they're calling halftime too early in a game. Like they're walking off the field and they're like, yeah, they're going to walk off too because it's halftime.
Right.
They're not giving up the objective. They think it's done, but it's like there's still 30 seconds left and the other team just goes down the field and scores. It just feels like maybe they're expecting that it's this ceasefire that's been called when it really hasn't, because they've done it multiple times. I know they don't want them to have the objective. They're not making a decision to give it up. I think they just thought that they had more time to back than they did. And it's something they've got to make sure they clean up a little bit more, because now they have the difficult task of stopping a Fire Giant Simplicity team from barreling down at them, and they only need a few moments with these double hunters to burn through these objectives.
This is the right call for Queso. Stay aggressive under this tier 2 tower, at least when Simplicity was spread out.
Right.
And this is still a fight that they can take, they being Team Queso.
If they can catch out Froisan like they just did and force him to play defensively, but he's already used the blink and the beads. Good job forcing those cooldowns out from him, but it's only a little bit. They're able to get done. The tier 2 in mid and duo are down. Now the tier 2 in the short lane under siege, and Queso won't even show face at this one. They're falling back to Phoenix just to play defense from there.
Team Queso has been playing Afraid for about 8 minutes, and that's the problem. If you haven't been kind of like, you know, taking minute-by-minute notes, 8 minutes, right before the Fire Giant. They were afraid, they walked away from the Fire Giant. Now that the enemy has the Fire Giant, it makes it a little bit more sense to be afraid. But Fire Giant, Enhanced Fire Giant, right now, that's still a fight you can take, especially 4-on-2, which is what we saw in the mid. I don't know. This is... I think Team Queso are giving up way too much.
And it is such a difficult question to decide. Do you want to take the fight against the Fire Giant team when you're relatively even, or do you want to give yourself a chance to defend underneath the Phoenix when they've actually got a gold lead in the bank? Now, it's late enough in the game where maybe giving up all that gold isn't as detrimental as it would be if it were 22 minutes.
Sure.
And it would be a lot more of an impact, but I think you're certainly still right. I mean, they're definitely still going to feel that difference in the gold at this point in the game. And well, it might be too late.
For me, it was more about the map pressure. You need those towers to fall back on after fighting these fights.
Well, up into the air goes Froisan. Genetics follows him up, and so does maniaKK. They force out the Ama Monster from Warchi early on. Dracomarino low on the backside, so WorstTurttle just goes right to the backline himself for StreakUp. But StreakUp has all his relics, and they send WorstTurttle running. But that does mean that the rest of the team survives on the right. It's just a question of how far away can WorstTurttle get. It cost them a lot, but Queso survived the initiation.
Just like that, all of a sudden things turn around. Queso finally get the chutzpah to kind of stand their ground, and they do that, and they're able to fight back. And now with that mentality, you know, you talk about the game being some parts math, some parts strategy. There's a lot of just player, like I said, playing too safe. There's a lot of kind of just player ego involved. And can I take this fight? Yes or no? Am I strong enough to deal with this? Yes or no? And I think Team Queso, after seeing the results of that last fight, have to come back and be like, what? We can fight them? Now, somebody should have told them 10 minutes ago they could have fought them, but they found out now, and the game is still going, so it's not too late.
Competitive SMITE's a lot more art than science, Tom, so sometimes you just gotta figure it out for yourself. Get in down there and dirty and get it done, you know?
It's probably 60-40, I'd say.
Yeah.
I think it's 60% math. There's a lot of math here.
Oh,
maniaKK just,
That's not good math then, right? He's definitely got to leave as the rest of Queso successfully punish him without giving up much.
Good subtraction.
Yeah, good subtraction. I like the way they played the disengage in the last fight. Warchi was quick on using the Ama Monster so that he wouldn't get knocked up. 4 members of Queso entirely booked it up that right side. And then to prevent the follow-up onto Dracomarino, who's in trouble, WorstTurttle blinks onto the backline and pulls in 3, really 4 members to focus in on him. And because he was able to get back out and they pulled the attention away from the right, Queso are able to disengage.
That's why, you know, we see all that attention on the right. Okay. DeathPanter using the ultimate. You got an idea there?
Yeah, maybe he was trying to catch out. I mean, because he can't see everyone when he goes up there.
Right.
And when he recognizes that WorstTurtle's alone, he's like, maybe I can pick him. But WorstTurtle just left because he's Susano. So.
He just left. Susano.
That is how Susano's like to do. Dracomarino will now frontline. He's got Julio to back up. Warchi's used Sentinel aggressively to try and come join in the fight, so maniaKK just sits on him. He knows he's never way back out, but it does still work out anyway. Julio finds StreakUp way, way, way in the backline, and Warchi still clings to life, but maybe not for long. maniaKK takes him out, and it's Hunter for mid laner.
maniaKK getting perhaps the most important kill in this team fight. Julio did a great job of getting to the back line and kind of punishing what StreakUp was able to do, but Queso still need to continue.
I just don't know why Warchi had to use the Sentinel there at all. Froisan now is backing up, and WorstTurttle is on the back line to find a 2-man knockup with the Typhoon. That's huge. DeathPanter low, but Froisan's the target. He blinks right towards him. Chekio finds maniaKK. Dracomarino puts DeathPanter in the dirt, and Froisan has to leave on the left-hand side, but Chekio is out for blood. He can't find the knockup, and it looks like he doesn't have the dash either. Team Queso have finally turned this fight around.
Oh my goodness, he's gotta die there. 3 kills is fine.
It's still good.
4 kills might have confirmed the game. 3 kills will at least confirm the Phoenix, and that is a great look here for Team Queso.
This goes down. Looks like they won't do much more other than that, at least for now. Froisan and Genetics are here and forcing them out. Well, they can't afford to go up too far. Team Queso certainly still have turnaround potential, but what a big fight from them, man. And really, I mean, I just can't get over the way, maybe they thought that it would be a much bigger push from Queso than that, and that's why Warchi goes in aggressive. It sort of catches them off guard, but it's just hard for me to ever think that's the play.
I got to agree with that one as well. It's a very dangerous call, very haphazard. Sometimes Scyllas will build Polynomicon, and if you're going to build Polynomicon, your Sentinel becomes an offensive ability. Even then, I'm kind of questioning it. I'm with you, Finch. And like all rules in SMITE, or in, honestly, this is a life tip, not a SMITE tip. Like all rules, gotta break them sometimes. That one should not have been broken there.
They just really thought that Surge was going to be way more offensive than it was. Simplicity. Like, it's like Queso ran at them, and Simplicity were like, okay, we'll run at you too.
Yeah.
And like just kind of push past them. It all works out for Queso in the end. They're able to come grab a mid-Phoenix, but it just feels like, I don't know, maybe it could have been cleaner.
Let me tell you a story from my youth.
Right, I did ask even, yeah.
I was playing football after detention one day, and I played fullback in like organized football, but we were just messing around. And so I'm sitting there, and they give the ball to me, and Gustavo, this giant dude, is on the other side, and I just run at him. We run at each other. My collarbone collapses on itself as we go shoulder to shoulder. That's what happened there.
Are you telling me you were rolling around with a guy named Gustavo?
Yeah, we were playing football, and I just ran directly straight at him. No pads, we're playing in the schoolyard. And he runs directly at me and just stands there. And that's what happened to Queso.
Yeah.
They ran into a giant Brazilian 5 inches taller than them, and they got crushed because they decided to run into a larger opponent. That was not the play. Queso have to go about things a little bit more tactically. I want to see them kind of isolate Froisan post-ultimate. I want to see them get to StreakUp like they did the last time, even though they heavily depended on Julio. That's what I'm talking about. Isolate Froisan either pre or post-ultimate, and now they got to look for the Hunter.
See if they can find him, as now they have a chance to come right back. The fight still does work for Queso at the very least, so it's not too bad. Just wonder, if there are some areas where it could have been cleaner, but it's certainly still with them feeling good. They're considering pushing forward one more time, but they don't have everyone here. Even WorstTurtle's not fully joined in yet, but you'd think they'd want to go soon when they still have Froisan's ultimate on cooldown, as they're going to loop all the way around. I don't know if Simplicity know this is happening.
I don't think they do. Genetics is looking a different direction. Here
Well,
are the minions. Now they know. Now you know.
Genetics is able to find the pull and the push. Genetics brought right back in the rest of the team. An immediate use of the ultimate to get him out of it, but Sickham's waiting, I'm a Monster's waiting, but Genetics, he lives through it all, and now maniaKK can come over the top on the Jormungandr ultimate, and Queso might have committed too much trying to take down the Fafnir, but maniaK's largely alone. He doesn't really have any backup as they try and isolate WorstTurttle. Yet again, the jungler kept the follow-up from being there for maniaK.
Great job again from WorstTurttle, just isolating players and making sure that Simplicity can't collapse. maniaKK is using this tool. We mentioned how the Jormungandr is going to get behind enemy lines. The problem is the other teammates don't have the same ability. That's what Froisan and DeathPanter are there for. Froisan doesn't have his ultimate because it's chased out before the fight begins, and DeathPanter uses it during the team fight, but a little bit later on a different target. So with that in mind, that's where Simplicity's team fight kind of falls apart, because you're right, Queso overcommitted. You called that 100% correctly, but Simplicity just didn't have the gas in the tank to actually go for the drive to Huntington. They couldn't confirm the kills.
And this is why I always say that as good as Susano is for damage, he's just as good as for control on your team.
Absolutely.
When you feel like there's a vacuum on it and you need a little bit more. Because I don't know, maybe Fear No Evil from Inbot, those types of ultimates, and that's ultimates can kind of hit that same spot. WorstTurttle kept the whole team from following up for maniaKK there.
That's the thing, is that you have the ultimate, which is admittedly not as impactful as Fear No Evil, but the pull, man.
It's so
the
strong.
pull is a huge deal. And when you're able to yank somebody out of their little hole and bring them into the middle of a team fight, or just bring them away from the team fight, whatever your job is, displacement, putting somebody where they don't want to be, it's one of the most powerful things you can do in SMITE.
Definitely is all strong. So Queso still the aggressors around the FG, the ones pushed up past the actual Fire Giant pit itself. And Simplicity have not been able to execute this multiple ways of initiation comp that worked so well for them. The DeathPanter Froisan maniaKK sort of combo has not really been able to come together in these last few fights, because Queso have done such a good job of forcing out Froisan's pieces early or forcing out maniaKK to ult early. Simplicity have to return back to that combo that worked for them.
Which one was that?
The Froisan.
Go back to that same combo? I agree. They need to be able to spread it out. Team Queso has just been done a great job of kind of separating it out from them.
That's exactly right. As Warchi in some trouble. He's able to use beads to get away. Has to use I'm a Monster as well. Froisan, it looks like maybe was out of range and couldn't quite catch him out. That's Aegis 2 now from Warchi as Julio's low in the back line.
Oh no.
But maniaKK keeps up the harassment. StreakUp punishes WorstTurttle. maniaKK finds Warchi. And even though the Serpent did some trouble, this is exactly the fight they want. Dracomarino has to jump away defensively as well. So StreakUp jumps in aggressively on his own. They don't have quite the damage from this range, but this fight's all Simplicity.
Adaptation. Simplicity do a great job. Everything John and I just covered, Simplicity listened to and responded. They knew that WorstTurttle was in the backline controlling their team and keeping them out of the team fight. So when WorstTurtle blinks from behind the wall, ain't nobody surprised. They're sitting there waiting like it's the barbecue. All three players collapse on WorstTurtle. He dies immediately. That allows Warchi to be focused on by maniaKK and Froisan. The rest is history, folks.
Well, time to move into the Titan room. Chekio's low already, has to return back to the fountain. Dracomarino gets chunked as well. The Titan's still healthy for now, but that's because no eyes have turned toward. That's a good taunt from Julio into the boulder from Dracomarino, but now that maniaKK's in the World Serpent, it's just too much damage. Simplicity grabbed the win, and despite how strong Queso look, they end up going down 2-1.
Another fantastic job from Simplicity, just adapting. As I said, now I was joking about them listening to us. They can't actually do that. Of course. But no, that was just a round of applause for the way they adapted, and they noticed everything that went wrong for them in the previous team fights, and they corrected it. And that literally won them the game. The
WorstTurtle part was certainly adaptation, but it was also critical that Froisan just didn't have his ultimate forced out. It happened 3 fights in a row where the Rat was caught isolated in mid or over on those left side Harpies. This time though, Froisan sticks with the squad, and they're able to do the initiation that works so well for them together, and then like you said, they make the adaptation to handle WorstTurtle when he dies the back line.
Great stuff. That's the way you got to play to win games.
Ends up being critical for them. Simplicity grabbed the set 2-1. Unfortunately though for Queso. Let's get it back over to the desk though. They got to break that down.
Thank you, Finch and Tom. Simplicity end up keeping off the 3rd seed Queso and winning a very, very close game 3. And totally the thing that stood out in that last fight to me is that Warchi is just completely separated from the rest of his team. Hugging the right side wall in solo lane in a siege scenario is just asking for trouble.
Yeah, you're definitely not at the right place at the right time if you're Warchi. He's made some questionable positioning mistakes on the Scylla one time when he actually used that Sentinel aggressively. He gets absolutely punished for it. WorstTurttle luckily was able to clean up that fight on the Susano, but couldn't clean up that fight in the lane. That's the difference between a Susano in the jungle fights versus in the lane fights.
Well, Warchi was the only one in the lane. Everyone else was in the jungle, and I think that's where a lot of the problem was. So Simplicity ended up taking home Game 3 and the set by extension. Great bounce back from them because Queso looked like they were the better team today in Game 1 by a considerable margin after that steal of the Fire Giant. It's easy to forget, though, that Simplicity was the one who was kind of pushing the pace at the beginning part of that Game 1. So despite a rough break almost in Game 1, they're able to bounce back mentally.
They managed to switch things up by banning away the Nuwa. That was kind of the key focal point. That global damage, they were just annoyed by that. So stripping that away put Warchi in different gods, and I think that Game 3, Warchi did not step up today.
This was the Fire Giant secure for Simplicity. StreakUp there alongside DeathPanter. This fight for maniaKK, obviously great. I mean, all over Warchi, as we mentioned, who's just kind of in an odd spot, but that Yorm damage, man, and you cannot count that out. It does the real stuff. maniaKK sitting at 3-2 at the end of that one. DeathPanter, by the way, I want to give him a shout out. He was having a bit of a rough game in the damage department until that last fight. I think he got 6,000 damage. I think he went from 11K to 17K by the end of that last team fight. So he had a big one, and that's kind of what, I mean, you only need one really good fight as a mid lane hunter to turn it around.
Hashtag late game hunter things.
That's
no problem. Easy for DeathPanter. No problem whatsoever. Big shout out also to Froisan in this game, stepping up for fails, managing to fulfill that jungle position and excel.
Yeah, this is a big win for Simplicity because without their jungler here and with their MSI spot really on the line in a lot of ways up against Queso, Simplicity the number 2 seed right now, Queso right behind them. This was a really, really big game for Simplicity to win, and to do it without Fails, who's been playing really, really well as of late, is a big win for them.
That's right. Now they're going to go up in the standings a little bit, going from 5-3 to 6-3. Flashpoint also at 6-3, so it's going to be a toss-up between which teams go to MSI.
Wow, it's really felt like Flashpoint was going to run away with this and be the top seed in Europe with ease, but they've lost 2 weeks in a row now. And all of a sudden, they're kind of behind the 8 ball a bit about securing the first seed, and it's not fully guaranteed that they're going, I don't think.
It's rough stuff, honestly, for Flashpoint. They really need to tighten up the gears to be able to secure their spot.
Yeah, let's take a look at those standings so you can see visually what we're talking about when it comes to the standings. They do have the plus-minus in their advantage, 5-4 over Simplicity, but 3-6 for both Outcold and Queso. Outcold now right behind Queso overall in that plus-minus as well. So only a couple weeks remaining. MSI spots coming down to it. Simplicity able to clutch up a win. This looks a lot different if it's Queso at 4-5 and Simplicity at 5-4. So having a 2-game lead there it's huge.
I think every team needs to watch out for Outcold Gaming, though. That is a team that is on the up and up, and Flashpoint a little bit on the down and down. So we could see those two standings reverse.
Yeah, something to keep an eye on is when the former world champions get hot in Outcold Gaming, at least a one player on there, a former world champion. You got to give them some respect. Give us some respect for the NASML coming up next as well. It's going to be a good one. So take a quick break. We'll be right back as we switch over to North America.
The SMITE Minor League brought to you by Titan Forge, Hi-Res Studios, iNap, Respawn, Steel Series, Alienware, and Skillshot.